When Hurricane Ida cut power to Louisiana in 2021, theft increased by over 600% in just 4 days. Not in weeks, but in just 4 days. And this is what most people overlooked. The robbers not only stole generators, they were taking batteries, propane tanks, bottles of water, even bags of ice. Everything that allowed survival without electricity became a goal as soon as the light went out. My name is Zakhar. I have been preparing since 2012 and have studied all the major cases of power outages, grid failures, and collapse scenarios that I could find. From the power outage in the Northeast in 2003 to the frosts in Texas and what is happening now in parts of South America. And there is a pattern. When the energy is cut off, desperate people do not think logically. They act tactically. And the 9 categories of supplies that I'm about to tell you are exactly what they will look for first. This is not intimidation. It is recognizing patterns based on real events. And by the end of this video, you will definitely know how to protect the most important things without turning your home into a fortress. Let's begin. The first category includes prescription medications and first aid kits. This is something that is not talked about enough among preppers. When the network goes down, pharmacies close within hours. Not because they want it, but because their systems are completely digital. No electricity means no pharmacy computers, no insurance checks, no way to issue medications. And if you rely on daily recipes to treat blood pressure, diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, or mental health, you suddenly find yourself in a life and death situation. During Hurricane Maria in 2017 in Puerto Rico, pharmacies were closed for weeks. People with insulin were rationing their doses. Diabetics were sharing medications. And after 10 days, hospitals began admitting people in critical condition because they could not get their prescriptions. Now think about your neighborhood. How many people do you know who take daily medications? Now imagine that they suddenly lose access to them, starting to panic. But it's not just about the medications. Pharmacy supplies also become critically important. During the earthquake in Christchurch, New Zealand in 2011, the Red Cross reported that essential first aid items like bandages, antiseptics, painkillers, and even simple gauze were completely sold out within the first 48 hours. People treated cuts and injuries at home because hospitals were overwhelmed, and those with supplies became instant targets for requests, exchanges, and unfortunately, thefts. This is what is important to understand. In conditions of power outage, the number of injuries sharply increases. People move in the dark. They use unfamiliar tools to solve problems. Candles cause burns. Generators lead to carbon monoxide poisoning. Simple cuts can become infected because there is no clean water for treatment. Suddenly, that bottle of hydrogen peroxide or box of bandages becomes not just convenient, but a vital supply. So, how to protect these supplies? First of all, never keep all your medical supplies in the bathroom cabinet. That's the first place anyone will look. I have a small stash there for distraction, mainly over-the-counter medications that are about to expire. Real supplies are distributed. Part is stored in a locked box in the garage, labeled as emergency car kit. A part is in a hermetic container under the sink in the bathroom, behind the cleaning supplies. A stock of prescription medications lies in a waterproof bag inside a hollowed-out book on the shelf. I'm not joking. Secondly, if you are taking prescription medications, talk to your doctor about the possibility of getting a 90-day supply instead of 30. Some insurance plans allow this, some do not, but it's worth asking. And if you have the opportunity, use services like Mark Cuban's Cost Plus Drugs to create a small reserve for emergencies at a lower price. I am not connected to them, I just know people who have successfully used them. Thirdly, learn the basics of first aid beyond just applying a bandage. When you can handle minor injuries on your own, you depend less on requests for help, and thus, there is less chance that someone will discover your supplies that might interest them. Knowledge is the best hidden resource. Now let's move on to fuels and combustibles. Let's talk about what causes the most chaos during a power outage: the inability to move, cook, or maintain warmth. And for all this, fuel is necessary. Gasoline, propane, kerosene, even firewood. When the electricity goes out, gas stations cannot refuel cars. Their pumps run on electricity. Even if they have backup generators, they can only operate as long as there is diesel fuel, usually from 48 to 72 hours. During the cyber attack on the Colonial Pipeline in 2021, despite having electricity, the fuel shortage caused real panic in the Southeast. People were collecting gasoline in plastic bags. Fights broke out at the pumps. Gas stations were emptied within hours after the news broke. Now imagine that same panic, but without electricity, without communication, and without any idea of when it will all return. That's when fuel becomes more valuable than money. During the economic collapse in Venezuela, A gallon of gasoline on the black market cost more than a month's salary. People siphoned fuel from abandoned cars. They exchanged family relics for a few liters, and those known as fuel keepers faced robberies. This was not a guess. It was reality. But here is what most people do not think about. It's not just about gasoline. Propane tanks for grills, kerosene for heaters, even lighter fluids, and coal become highly valuable targets. During an ice storm in Texas, propane tanks were stolen from doorsteps in broad daylight. The Home Depot and Lowe's stores were completely stripped of everything that could create heat or cook food. And this was happening in a state where most people have firearms and are not afraid to use them. Despair overcomes fear. So what to do? First of all, if you store fuel, never keep it all in one place. I keep a small amount of fuel in my garage in approved containers, but the main supply is in a locked gazebo away from the house, which doesn't look like it has anything valuable in it. I even saw some stockpilers bearing fuel supplies in airtight barrels on their territory. This may be radical, but it is effective. The second piece of advice is to diversify fuel types. Do not limit yourself to gasoline, which quickly loses its properties. Even with the addition of stabilizers, propane can be stored indefinitely. Kerosene lasts for many years. Firewood can be replenished if you have trees and the means to process them. A small diesel generator offers flexibility since diesel lasts longer than gasoline and is less likely to be stolen due to fewer vehicles using it. The third advice is to maintain anonymity. Never fill gasoline cans in your driveway where neighbors can see you. Do not store propane tanks in plain sight. And for heaven's sake, don't talk about your fuel supplies on social media. It sounds obvious, but you would be surprised how many people boast about their supplies online and then wonder why they became targets during a local disaster. The seventh point, batteries and portable energy sources. This is the reality you face immediately during a power outage. All modern equipment runs on electricity. Your phone, flashlight, radio, medical devices. When the power goes out, batteries become the new currency. No, this is not a metaphor. It's reality. During the freeze in Texas in 2021, I spoke with a man who exchanged a portable battery for a full propane tank. And he said it was the best deal of the week because this battery allowed him to keep his phone charged to stay in touch with his family. But let's look at the situation more broadly. During the blackout in the Northeast United States in 2003, stores were emptied of batteries in just 6 hours. People bought them in bulk. But this was before everyone had smartphones that run out of battery in 12 hours. Imagine what would happen today. Your phone is your flashlight, means of communication, source of entertainment, news, and map. When it runs out of battery, you find yourself isolated. And isolation in a crisis is dangerous. Lithium-ion technology batteries are especially valuable because they can be recharged and have a high power compared to disposable batteries. But there is a problem. They are very noticeable. If robbers or even desperate neighbors see that you have working lamps, chargers, or battery tools when others do not, you become a target. During Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, homes with generators or solar setups were constantly robbed. Not because people were evil, but because they were in a desperate situation. They needed to charge medical devices, contact loved ones, or simply have a few hours of light to feel human again. And when you are the only house on the street with electricity, despair finds you. So how do you protect your energy sources? First, use the principle of the gray man. Do not advertise the presence of electricity. Keep the light dimmed or turned off during peak hours when people move around the area. Use blackout curtains and never run the generator or power plant so that the sound or exhaust can be heard from the street. Secondly, create deceptive supplies. I have a small container with old, almost dead batteries in my garage. If someone breaks in and finds them, they might think that's all I have and leave. My real supplies are lithium-ion batteries, solar chargers, and packs of AA and AAA batteries. They are hidden in less obvious places, inside an old computer case, in a sealed bag behind the insulation in the attic, and even inside a fake electrical junction box attached to the wall. Thirdly, invest in solar chargers. It's quiet, renewable, and requires no fuel. I have a small foldable solar panel that can charge my batteries during the day. I keep it hidden, only taking it out in extreme cases, and never using it where it can be seen from the street. Solar technology has made great strides. You don't need a complete solar setup. A small portable system can support you during long-term power outages. Sixth, water and a water filtration system. Let me be clear. Food can be stretched for weeks. You can manage without electricity and remain uncomfortable but alive. But without water, just 3 days and your body starts shutting down. In the absence of electricity, municipal water supply systems quickly fail. Pumps need power, and treatment facilities do too. Even if the water continues to flow, there is no guarantee that it is safe to drink. During the water crisis in Toledo in 2014, 400,000 people were warned not to drink from the tap due to contamination with toxins. The bottled water in the stores ran out in less than 2 hours. People traveled to other cities to fill their bottles. And this was happening with electricity running, phones functioning, and full communication. Now imagine the same scenario, but in conditions of a power outage. No way to receive updates, no information about water safety, unable to buy more because the stores are closed and the ATMs are not working. That is why stored water and filters are among the first things taken in a crisis situation. In Puerto Rico, after Hurricane Maria, people drank from contaminated streams. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reported a 58% increase in gastrointestinal illnesses over 2 weeks because people had no choice. They drank what they could find. Those who had filters became the most important people in their neighborhoods, which also made them the most vulnerable. Here is the truth. If people find out that you can purify water, they will come to you. At first, they will be polite. Then they will start to beg. Then, if they are desperate enough, they will try to take her by force. I am not saying this to scare you. I say this because it has happened in all the prolonged disasters I have studied. Water creates dependency, and dependency creates danger. So how to protect your water supplies? First, decentralize everything. Do not store all the water in one place. I keep some in the basement, some in the garage, and a few 5-liter bottles hidden in my closet behind winter clothes. I even have supplies of water sealed in vacuum bags hidden in insulation in the attic. If someone finds one of these caches, the rest will remain a secret. Secondly, disguise your filtration equipment. I keep my Burke filter disassembled and placed in a large toolbox that looks like it contains electrical appliances. My mini Sawyer filters are in a zippered bag marked as camping gear, buried in a container with real hiking supplies. The spare chemical tablets for purification are in an old first aid kit, which has expired written on the outside. Deception works. Thirdly, have several methods of filtration: boiling, chemical tablets, ceramic filters, activated charcoal, ultraviolet purifiers. If one method fails or is removed, you have backup options. And never show your filtration system to anyone unless it's a matter of life and death. Once people know of its existence, you lose the ability to remain unnoticed. Since I understand how overwhelming this can be, especially if you are just starting to think about preparation, I have prepared something that can help. This is a completely free guide that shows how to turn $50 into food supplies for 90 days. I'm not exaggerating. $50. It contains an exact shopping list with specific brands and prices, 37 necessary items that most people don't even think about, and simple storage methods that work even in a small apartment. You don't need a warehouse. You don't need a big budget. You only need a plan. This guide also covers emergency meals that can be prepared without cooking fuel, which is critically important during power outages. And it even specifies an oil that lasts a long time without going rancid. Everything in this guide is what I have personally tested or use in my supplies. This is not theory. This is practical training that truly fits into everyday life, and it's completely free for you. I will leave a link in the description and attach it in the comments. Just let me know where to send it, and I will do it immediately. All right, let's continue, because we are going to move on to points that most people don't think about until it's too late. Point 5, food, especially that which has a long shelf life and is ready to eat. This seems obvious, but most people underestimate how quickly food disappears when the power goes out, not only from stores, but also from houses. During Hurricane Katrina, there were reports of people breaking into homes in search of pantries. During the economic collapse in Argentina, grocery stores were looted within hours of the crisis beginning. In Venezuela, people were looting farms and houses in search of something edible. This is what happens in the first 72 hours after the power goes out. Stores are closing because the cash registers are not working. Perishable goods are spoiling because the refrigerators stop working. People are panic buying everything they can grab. By the 4th day, if the electricity does not return, hunger begins to outweigh morality. Good people start making bad decisions because their children cry from hunger, and the houses known as prepared become targets. But it's not just about having food. It's important that it's the right food. Canned goods are heavy and noticeable. Sublimated products are expensive and take up a lot of space. You really need high-calorie, nutritious, long-lasting food that requires no cooking. Think about peanut butter, honey, rice, dried beans, pasta, canned tuna, and oatmeal. These are the products that helped people survive the Great Depression, wars, and any crises in modern history. During the Siege of Sarajevo in the 90s, people survived on flour, oil, and any available protein. A bag of rice could feed a family for a week. A can of vegetable oil cost more than jewelry, and those who stockpiled kept their supplies a secret and told no one, because as soon as it became known, a line of desperate people would form at your door. Lions cannot be attracted by attention, so what to do? First, do not store all the food in the kitchen pantry. This is the most obvious place. I keep a little there as bait, mostly what is close to the expiration date, but my real supplies are scattered under the beds, in airtight containers, in the corners of wardrobes, behind boxes labeled old things, in the basement, behind the boiler, even in large containers in the garage labeled holiday decorations. Boring labels do not attract attention. Secondly, regularly update your supplies. The last thing you need is to pull out emergency food and find that it expired 2 years ago. I use the first in, first out method. Old products are used first, new ones go to the back. And I actually cook regularly from my supplies to know what I have and how to prepare it. If you have never cooked from your supplies, you are not truly prepared. Thirdly, choose basic products in large quantities rather than ready-made meals. A 25-pound bag of rice costs about $15 and can feed one person for a month. A bucket of dried beans costs $20 and will provide protein for months. These are not the most appealing supplies. You won't see them in gear reviews on YouTube, but they help people survive when everything else runs out, and they are easy to hide as they look like ordinary pantry items. The fourth is sanitary and hygiene items. Let's talk about something that no one wants to discuss, but everyone needs to understand. When the electricity goes out, the toilets stop working shortly after. Why? Because modern sewage systems rely on electric pumps to transport waste to treatment facilities. No electricity means no pumps. Within 24 to 48 hours, toilets start to flush poorly. Sinks stop draining. Showers become clogged. This happened in New York during Hurricane Sandy. Entire apartment buildings lost water pressure and normal sewage operation. People used buckets. They wrapped up waste. Some literally threw waste out of windows because they had no other option. If you think this is disgusting, wait until 3 days without electricity, water, and the ability to dispose of waste. Suddenly, toilet paper becomes more valuable than money. In Venezuela during their crisis, diapers were sold on the black market for $20 each. Used diapers were washed and reused because nothing new was available. Women's hygiene products were exchanged like gold. Such simple items as soap or a bottle of disinfectant could buy you food. When outbreaks of disease begin, and they will inevitably start without proper sanitation, hygiene supplies become a matter of life and death. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention confirmed after Hurricane Maria that there was a sharp increase in gastrointestinal diseases in Puerto Rico due to people being unable to wash their hands properly or dispose of waste. Cholera, dysentery, and other waterborne diseases thrive in such conditions. And if you are the only one in your area with soap, bleach, gloves, and disinfectant, prepare for a multitude of desperate visitors. Here is what you need to do. First, stock up on the essentials. Toilet paper, of course, but also baby wipes, which are better than toilet paper in conditions without water. Hand sanitizer, bleach for disinfecting surfaces and cleaning water, trash bags for waste disposal, rubber gloves for handling contaminated materials, and soda, which can be used for cleaning, deodorizing, and even personal hygiene in an emergency. Secondly, hide these supplies in inconspicuous places. Don't keep everything under the sink in the bathroom. That's the first place they look. I distribute my supplies throughout the house. A part in a closed container in the garage labeled as car washing supplies. A part in a closet with bed linens behind old towels. A part in a plastic container in the basement labeled as old kitchen utensils. And I keep a small decoy stash in plain sight so that if someone starts searching, they find something and think it's all I have. Thirdly, develop a waste disposal plan. This is something almost no one thinks about until it's too late. I have a supply of sturdy trash bags, a 5-liter bucket with a lid for the toilet, and cat litter for odor control. It's not very appealing, but when there's no sewage system, safe waste disposal becomes necessary. And if you have children or elderly family members, it becomes even more critical. Plan ahead, not in the moment of crisis. And third, you need means for heating and cooling. This is a reality that most people do not think about until they start to freeze or overheat. When the electricity goes out, your heating and air conditioning system stops working. The fireplace, air conditioner, and electric heaters all of this disappears. Depending on the season, the situation can become unbearable and even deadly in just a few hours. During the frost in Texas in 2021, over 200 people died, not from lack of food, not from lack of water, but from hypothermia in their own homes because they had no way to warm up and the temperature inside dropped below zero. People burned furniture. They started cars and heaters to avoid freezing, which led to carbon monoxide poisoning. Others gathered under all the blankets they had, yet still could not withstand the cold. On the other end of the spectrum, during the European heat wave in 2003, over 70,000 people died from heat-related illnesses. Most of them were elderly and had no way to cool down. The lack of electricity meant no fans, air conditioners, or refrigerators to keep the water cold. People died in their apartments, unable to regulate their body temperature. And this is what exacerbates the danger. Supplies that help you heat or cool your home become very valuable targets during power outages. Propane heaters, kerosene, firewood, even blankets and sleeping bags. During the frost in Texas, propane heaters were sold for $500 on the online market, and small portable heaters for $200. Firewood cost $50 a bundle, if it could be found, and people were desperate enough to pay. That's where your supplies become noticeable and dangerous. If you use a propane heater and your windows are fogged with condensation, people know you have warmth. If you are the only house on the street that is comfortable, you advertise yourself. In survival conditions, advertising makes you a target. So what to do? First, invest in passive heating and cooling. Rough fabric for blankets, thermal underwear, sleeping bags designed for cold weather. They retain heat without requiring fuel and without making noise. Battery-operated fans, shading systems, and evaporative cooling methods can lower the indoor temperature without electricity. These methods are quiet, unobtrusive, and do not require demonstrating to the world that you are comfortable. Secondly, if you have active heating, such as a propane heater or a wood stove, use them strategically. Heat one small room instead of the whole house. Use blackout curtains to keep light and heat from being visible outside, and never turn on heaters during peak hours when people might notice. Heat at night when everyone sleeps, or during the day when it's less obvious. Thirdly, store fuel quietly and keep it secure. If you heat with firewood, do not stack it in your yard. It's like a billboard saying, "I'm prepared. Come take my things." Store them in a shed or garage. Or better yet, distribute small supplies in several places. If you use propane, keep the tanks locked and out of sight. And never tell anyone that you have them. Operational security is not paranoia, it's survival. The second is communication means and access to information. Let's talk about what psychologically destroys people faster than anything else during a power outage. Information isolation. When the electricity goes out, your internet stops working. Cell towers run on batteries that last maybe 24 hours. Then they shut down. Your television doesn't work, your computer doesn't work, and suddenly you are completely cut off from the outside world. This creates a spiral of panic. You don't know how extensive this power outage is. You are unsure if help is coming. It is unclear whether this is a temporary problem or the beginning of something more serious. And in this information vacuum, fear takes over. During the power outage in 2003 in New York, people thought they were under attack by terrorists because they had no access to reliable information. Rumors spread like wildfire, and people made dangerous decisions based on false information. But there is another side. If you have the ability to receive information when no one else can, you become incredibly valuable, but also vulnerable. A working battery-operated radio, a charged tablet with maps and guides, even a functional smartphone, while everyone else's batteries are dead. This gives you a huge advantage, but also makes you a target. During Hurricane Maria, people with satellite phones or radios became information centers for their communities. At first, it was wonderful. They could coordinate help, check on the family's well-being, and receive weather updates. But as the disaster dragged on, these people were overwhelmed with requests, then demands, and in some cases their equipment was stolen, as it was deemed too valuable to be left in one person's hands. How to maintain access to information without becoming a target. First, have multiple means of communication. A manual emergency radio for receiving weather alerts, a battery-powered radio for news, a radio station if you have a license, providing access to emergency networks and offline resources. Download survival guides, medical manuals, local maps, and emergency procedures onto your tablet or smartphone. When the internet is down, these materials become invaluable. Secondly, hide your communication devices and use them in private. Don't sit on the porch listening to the radio when you can be seen. Do not let on that you know what is happening. Gathering information must be quiet. Make decisions for your family and share only what is necessary with those you trust. The fewer people who know about your capabilities, the safer you will be. Thirdly, consider low-tech backup options. Physical maps of your area, printed lists of emergency contacts with addresses, not just phone numbers, as phones may not work. Even a simple notebook and pencil for taking notes. They are not high technology, but they are reliable, do not require electricity, and cannot be hacked or blocked. Sometimes old methods turn out to be the best. And finally, do not forget about comfort items and morale-boosting supports. This is what surprises many. When I say that the most stolen and critically important things during a long-term blackout are comfort items, people look at me like I'm crazy. They think it should be weapons, gold, or something tactical. But here's what I learned studying all major collapse scenarios from Bosnia to Argentina and Venezuela. Mental breakdown happens before physical destruction. And when your mental state collapses, everything else follows. During the siege of Sarajevo in the 90s, survivors said that having small comforts, a deck of cards, books, a working battery-operated radio, determined whether they could hold on to hope or give up. In the conditions of the economic crisis in Venezuela, families who could gather around the table and play board games remained united. Those who could not do this faced the breakdown of family ties, quarrels, and mental exhaustion. Here is the harsh truth. Even if you have a year's supply of food, clean water, and excellent security, sitting in darkness for weeks with nothing to do, with no way to entertain yourself or distract from stress and fear, your mind will break. And when your mind breaks, you make catastrophic decisions, give up, become reckless, and lose the will to survive. This is especially true for families with children. Children are bored and scared. They cry, whine, and ask questions that cannot be answered. But if you can offer them an activity, coloring, a board game, or a favorite toy, it will help them calm down. And when they are calm, you can think clearly, plan, and survive. But here is the danger. These comfort items become extremely valuable in times of prolonged crisis. During economic collapses, maps were used as currency. Batteries from portable music players were exchanged for food, and one chocolate bar was divided into 10 pieces to boost the group's morale. And when people find out that you have such things, especially if your children are calm and entertained while the neighbor's children suffer, interest will arise, and someone might try to take what you have. So how can we protect items that uplift the spirit while keeping them accessible? First, stock up on them now, while it's easy. Books, especially those that can be reread, board and card games, notebooks and art supplies for children, batteries for small devices, offline music or podcasts downloaded on a device, hard candies or chocolate that last long and uplift the mood. Even small things like coffee, tea, or instant cocoa can drastically change the situation when everything around looks bleak. Secondly, hide them creatively. I keep maps in old video cassette boxes on a shelf that looks like junk. I have soft-cover books disguised as textbooks with uninteresting titles like mathematics or tax law. Coloring books and crayons for children are in a container labeled old school supplies in the basement, while my stash of chocolate and coffee is vacuum-packed in bags labeled camping meals. Boring, uninteresting labels are your friends. Thirdly, use these items rationally and never show them publicly. If you have a radio playing music, turn it on inside a room with closed windows and drawn curtains. If you play a board game with family, do it away from windows so neighbors can't see. And never let outsiders know you have a stock of comfort items. In long darkness, hope becomes the most valuable commodity. If people see that you have hope, they will either want you to share it or try to take it away. In 2014, when I studied the Bosnian War and how families survived in sieges that lasted for years, I realized one important thing. Those who survived were not always the ones with the most supplies. They were the ones who preserved their humanity and sanity. They told stories. They quietly sang songs. They found small moments of joy in the darkness, and it was this that helped them carry on when everything around suggested giving up. That's why moral support is not a luxury. It is a necessity of life. Protecting them is as important as guarding food and water. Before we finish, I want to quickly remind you of the free guide I mentioned earlier. If you haven't downloaded it yet, take just a couple of seconds and follow the link in the description. It's completely free. No credit card, no tricks. Just a simple proven plan to turn $50 into food supplies for 90 days. Whether you're a beginner in prepping or have been doing it for years, there's something useful in this guide for you.